Today we're going to talk about identifying angle relationships. The lesson objective for this lesson is that I can identify angle relationships formed by parallel lines being cut by a transversal. So the bulk of this video is about vocabulary and how to classify and identify angles when we're looking at parallel lines with a transversal. You need to write down the definitions of all of the words, and you need to show a picture and an example somewhere in your notes. So let's jump right into it. The first thing we need to talk about is what are parallel lines and a transversal. So parallel lines are lines that are always the same distance apart and never cross. I know probably back in elementary school or over at Lincoln, when you were talking about parallel lines, you talked about train tracks because train tracks are always the same distance apart and they never cross. So when you look at this figure on the side here, J and K are parallel lines. They never cross. A transversal is a line that intersects two or more parallel lines. So it actually cuts them and makes angles within the parallel lines. So if you look at this, T is a transversal. Make sure you get both of those vocabulary down, their definitions, and the picture. So once we know that we have parallel lines and a transversal, or a line that cuts them, okay, we can talk about the angles that are found there. The first type of angles we want to talk about are corresponding angles. Corresponding angles are on the same side of the transversal and on the same side of the parallel lines. Corresponding angles have the exact same measure. So if you have two corresponding angles and one is 125 degrees, so is the other one. So let me show you some examples of corresponding angles. So angle 1 and angle 5, oops, forgot to write the 1, are corresponding angles. I'll circle those. They are on the same side of the transversal and they're on the same side of the parallel line. See how 1 is above the first parallel line? 5 is also above the first parallel line. Let's look at another set. 4 and 8 are corresponding angles. There are two more sets. 2 and 6 are corresponding angles. And then also 3 and 7 are corresponding angles. Make sure you have the examples, the picture, and the vocabulary word. There are also vertical angles when you have parallel lines and a transversal. Vertical angles are opposite angles formed by two intersecting lines. Vertical angles have the same measure. So if you have two vertical angles and the first one is 63 degrees, the second one is also 63 degrees. So let's look. 1 and 3 are vertical angles. 2 and 4 are vertical angles. See if you can pick out another set of vertical angles and then see if you do okay. So pause it, pick out a set of vertical angles and see if you're right. All right, so let's see if you picked one of these. There are two more sets. 5 and 7 are vertical angles. And then 6 and 8 are vertical angles. Hopefully you got one of those sets correct. They're across from each other on the parallel line and the transversal. Let's talk about supplementary angles. Supplementary angles are between the parallel lines and on the same side of the transversal. And when you put supplementary angles together, when you put their measures together and add them, they make 180 degrees. We talked about supplementary angles a lot last year, but not necessarily on parallel lines. So there are two sets of supplementary angles on parallel lines. They're inside between the parallel lines and on the same side of the transversal. So for instance, 4 and 5 are supplementary angles. Good grief. 4 and 5 are supplementary, and if I added their measures together, they would equal 100 degrees. 180 degrees. I should start over probably. Sorry about that, guys. So let's pick one more set. 3 and 6 are supplementary angles. 3 and 6 are also supplementary angles, and they equal 180 degrees. Okay, so only 2 more sets to go. The next set are alternate exterior angles, and they are what they sound like. They're on the outside of the parallel lines, and they're on opposite sides of the transversal. When you look at these, they have the same angle measurement. So for instance, angle 1 and angle 7 are alternate exterior angles. They're on the outside of the parallel lines, and they're on opposite sides of the transversal. So angle 1 and angle 7 are alternate exterior. One more set. See if you can pick the set. Pause it and come back and see how you did. Okay, let's see if you pick this set. 2 and 8 are alternate exterior angles. And then just the opposite of that are alternate interior angles. They're on the inside of the parallel lines and opposite sides of the transversal, and they have the same measurement. So here's a set. 3 and 5 are alternate interior angles. So pause the video, see if you can find the other set of alternate interior angles, and then come back and see how you do. Let's see if you got it. Angle 4 and angle 6. Those are alternate interior angles on the inside of the parallel lines and opposite of the transversal. So this is a lot of vocabulary. You might want to go back and go over it again. Make sure you have the examples so that when we do our practice next week, you'll be able to check your notes for the examples.